Hello there, everybody. Welcome along to the League Two podcast here on EFL Debate. Hope you're keeping well on this Wednesday evening. We're discussing the early pace setters in League Two with Notts County a little bit on the fringes of the playoff place at the moment, along with Tranmere Rovers. They have 8 points apiece. AFC Wimbledon, Doncaster Rovers, Newport County, Barrow and Walsall have amassed a respectable 9 points so far, while Gillingham leads the table with 10. So plenty to get into in this League Two podcast. Yes, welcome along to this League Two podcast. I'm delighted to be joined by my co-host Ed Walker, an expert on all things fourth tier, and Tranmere Rovers fan Ben Jones. Thanks for your company this evening. We're going to kick things off with Simon Ward from Walsall Fan TV. Good evening, Simon. Thanks so much for joining us from the joy and the pain of Walsall Fan TV. More joy than pain at the moment, Simon.
We are overflowing with joy at the moment. I am. There is a little cloud that sort of is there, but I mean, I'm really happy the way we've started the season.
How do you mean by a little cloud?
We've had a few injuries. We sort of down to the bare bones in some positions. Eight players not really available at the minute out of the squad, so that sort of tightens things up a little bit and is a concern. But other than that, really pleased. Really pleased.
I tell you what, Simon, I'm absolutely loving Connor Barrett at the moment because he's got a bit of skill in his game, that bit of unpredictability where you don't quite know which way he's going to go. But at the same time, he's got that bit of pace and directness in his game as well as being defensively competent whilst being a really attacking right back who can do so much damage going forward. He's the closest thing to the complete package you're going to get in League Two, isn't he?
Yeah, you could say that. Against Blues yesterday, the one excellent pass by the Blues, and it looked like they'd caught him out, and he managed to get back with some decent pace and just get a really crucial tackle in. Connor Barrett, yeah, he is, compared to Tom Knowles last season. Tom Knowles was an exciting player, but perhaps a little bit too hot-headed. And
he's quicker than Tom Knowles, isn't he? I think Tom Knowles had good quick feet about him, but Connor Barrett's got that bit of directness. I think he's got an extra level.
I think the difference between Walsall last season and this season is definitely Connor Barrett, and he's better at picking out a pass. The problem with Tom Knowles, he just lost his head at that key moment, and Connor Barrett has sort of got the composure. The goal from yesterday.
Did you see the Jamil Matt finish at the near post?
Oh, that was from Saturday. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
But the goal from last night, Charlie Lakin had been ribbing Connor Barrett to say, whenever you beat your man, I'm here at the edge of the box. And he picked him out, and Charlie Lakin slotted it into the top corner first time. It was a beautiful finish, but Connor Barrett, so much ability. Really positive thing for us. What I want to come on to is we thought we'd really miss Isaac Hutchinson. 12 goals, 11 assists last season. But when we look at a more critical eye at Isaac Hutchinson, he was a bit of an in and out player. He'd sort of have a couple of good games and then he'd go missing, and particularly in the physical exchanges. What we've got now, we haven't got that standout player like Isaac Hutchinson, but all of the midfield are really combative and full of energy. So we just onto people like a swarm in the middle of the park. And we've got so many options in midfield, everybody fighting for positions. So round about the 60-minute mark, they're changing them and freshening it up. And that's made a real big difference. I think that's a real big plus for Walsall so far.
Do you know what, Simon? I think that's a great point because I watched the extended highlights of the last league game, and I thought you had sort of Ryan Stirk in that sort of deeper sitting role, but then you had Jamie Jellis and Charlie Lakin being super aggressive against the ball, which, considering you've got attacking wing backs as well in Connor Barrett and and Liam Gordon, it means that you're putting a lot of pressure on opponents, and I think it's really exciting to see.
Yeah, Jamie Jelly, see what a find he is. Playing National League with Tamworth last season, joined us in January, had a bit of a knock and didn't really sort of play, but stepping into the professional ranks, it's took him a while to sort of build up fitness, but he's a massive addition to the midfield. I'm really impressed with him. Charlie Lakin, we were sort of a little bit disappointed with him, but he arrived last night. And against Huddersfield last Tuesday, he came on for Ryan Stirk after Ryan Stirk had a knock, and he played at CDM, and he was awesome. So Charlie Lakin has gone up in my estimation, even though I think there's a lot more to come from him. And then, of course, Jack Earing, he's only really just coming back into the team. We know the quality he's got. He actually played him up front last night, which was a bit of a weird one.
Didn't he play left wing back as well last week when he came on in the second half?
That was Charlie Lakin.
Oh, was that Lakin? Sorry.
Right. Yeah, Lakin played wing back for a little bit.
Right.
He's showing his versatility. Yeah, we've got Earing, and then of course Ronan Mayer. He's sort of building minutes. He's had some good moments as well. I think he's another one of the Walsall midfield that are sort of just waiting for their first goal to really sort of set themselves alight, sort of thing. So positive midfield. Defence has been strong, but that's where we've had the injuries. Preachley Farquharson, we know he's a tower of strength, particularly in League Two, but the injury concerns are the problem, and he's got injured again. Looks like he's going to be out for a spell. So that's a big loss. We've already got.
So, Simon, you've got a bit of a specialist wide centre back there in Taylor Allen. The way he underlaps and maybe creates a bit of space for Liam Gordon to get his deliveries in and put some good deliveries in himself. I'm really liking Taylor Allen at the moment.
Taylor Allen, I'm glad we've extended his contract. He's really sort of developed into that role really well. Harry Williams was the star of the show last night, but alongside him, David Kagbu. Again, he did good. But Osh McKenty has also been great at centre half. He went off,
the Great.
Yeah, O'Sheen the Great. He went off with an injury, so he's going to have some time out as well. So it does leave us a bit lighter at the back. Liam Gordon went off injured as well. I think he's probably a couple of missing for Saturday, but we've got a spare Tuesday. So hopefully he'll be back for the following Saturday, all being well. Yeah, so it's a few challenges, and we haven't mentioned Albert Adoma yet. He's sort of missed a couple of games.
Just a small mention of a.
I was really hoping he would start yesterday and just star in the show at Blues as well. Kind of disappointed I wouldn't see that because I think the Blues fans were kind of waiting for him in some ways.
Well, I thought he'd start, but he had a bit of a knock on his shoulder, and as older guys will know that sort of things take a bit longer to heal when you're a bit older. And but I think he should be. I would hope he's going to be on the bench on Saturday, and then of course there's another Tuesday, a free Tuesday before we get into the action again. Really,
Ben, we mentioned Charlie Lakin earlier. Is he someone you would have wanted at Tranmere?
Yeah, I think when last season finished, he was one of the ones I had kind of said, he could do a good job for us. I'm quite happy with what we have, but yeah, he's a good player, and I can see him doing really well for Walsall this year, especially as there are a lot more. I don't know, they're a lot better on the ball than Sutton were, let's say.
Yeah.
So I think that will really suit him, and they'll create more of those wide overloads, which will then allow him to get up the pitch in the centre and make the late runs into the box, which is where I think I saw him scoring his goals for Sutton last year. So yeah, I think he'll do really well for them this year.
I'll tell you the one that I'm really loving at Walsall at the minute. It's up top. So we knew it was going to be Jamil Matt and Josh Gordon from the start. Reyes Cleary comes in as an option, and then getting Nathan Lowen from Stoke. That's the one that I really, really like as potentially an impact signing to the season. Its impact was instant in that Huddersfield game, as we saw, Simon, and it gets a sense already that he's just a great fit up top.
Well, Gabble now, when we went through the season predictions, he was saying 14th. I was saying if we don't get any strikers in, I think we're going to end up near 18th. And Gab was sort of raising his eyebrows at that. But now we've got the quality of Nathan Lowe in. That's sort of really because everything else for Walsall seems to be working. So getting a striker in like Nathan Lowe, who is so hungry to succeed, got so much ability, he's going to be massive. Ray's Cleary has perhaps been a little bit disappointing at the moment. He's not fully fit yet. He came on against the Blues, and it may be a little bit unfair, but he was part of the reason, I think, why we let the victory slip. Because when he came on, he wasn't pressing like the others had been done, and he was on the back post for the corner that led to their goal. If a ball goes over your head,
now, Ray has his bit.
Well, the thing is, if you're on the back post and the ball goes over your head, I think most people would turn round, but he hadn't turned round.
Right.
The header went onto his back, dropped down, and then the guy just knocked it into the out net.
I do think with those games, it can be a little bit difficult for substitutes because they're not too much better than glorified friendlies with the way clubs kind of treat them.
Yeah.
You pretty much see every club making the full allocation of subs every game, which you wouldn't see on a Saturday necessarily.
Yeah.
And then I think a consequence of that is you can see kind of lapses of concentration and moments where players don't get up to the intensity of the game for whatever reason. Because I think if you look through the first round of fixtures across that whole tournament, there's probably been a lot of goals from teams in those last 5 minutes because of that kind of thing going on where players are just kind of coasting at the end of the game.
I think that's fair enough, but I think his attitude when he came on for the first sort of 5 minutes, he was running round, and then he sort of seemed to be worn out already.
Yeah.
So I think he just needs to sharpen up his fitness a little bit. I think from hearing from the Baggies fans, he is a great talent, and they say he's better than Mo Fall. So if he's better than Mo Fall, then he's going to be massive for us. But he just needs to get up to fitness.
Well, let's hope he can do that. Simon, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your insight on Walsall. I know you've got to shoot off in a few moments, so thanks so much for joining us and keep up the great work on Walsall Fan TV.
Cheers, mate. It's flying at the minute, so really pleased with that. The joy and the pain follow the journey.
I'll catch you at the best Scotland game this season, I'm sure, Simon.
Yeah, good one. Thanks, mate. Cheers.
Top man. Delighted to be joined now by Danny from Rambling Rovers podcast. Danny, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. 3 wins in 4. I presume you're pretty happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Apart from our minor blip against Newport, a team who we always seem to lose against no matter what. Other than that, yeah, it's been fantastic. We've carried on our form from back end of last season, and we've carried on. I think it's helped with the board backing McCann early on in the window, getting 7 signings in before end of June. So we were settled and set to go from the off. I think that's what McCann's main top priority was from the get-go, was to be settled and be ready for first game. And it's proved dividends at the minute. It's been a good start.
Certainly has. I guess the big star at the moment, Danny, is Luke Molyneux with that transitional threat that he provides.
He looks like Hartlepool Luke Molyneux again, and I'm really happy with that because Hartlepool Luke Molyneux was excellent.
Yes,
absolutely. And you see, thing is, we Luke is when we bought him we got him on a free transfer from Hartlepool. We all expected it to be the Luke Molyneux what we're seeing now when we signed him 2 years ago. But I think now we're seeing the fruits of that Luke Molyneux, what they saw at Hartlepool week in and week out, because confidence, he's got the confidence again, and confidence is key. It's like McCann does wonders with wingers. I mean, look what he did with Adelican last season as well, towards the end of last season. Molyneux is now looking like a typical McCann winger. And it's, like I said, it's all on confidence. And he's the top scorer of League Two at minute with 4. He's produced the most chances as well for a player as well, goal scoring chances as well. So he's scoring and he's assisting. So it's all good, really.
Danny, can I ask you? I'm going to go further back. I want to talk goalkeepers for a moment because we had Timothy Lotatar last year that people loved on loan from Hull. And as much as it would be nice to get back, it felt like it wasn't really going to happen for him. He's going to go elsewhere than Doncaster. How we found Teddy Sharma-Low so far, because this is a guy who was extremely young when he came out of Burton, was bought by Chelsea. He's had loans in non-league up to now. It's his first Football League taste. How have we found him so far, trying to fill those gloves that Lotatar has left?
To be honest, with Sharma-Low, it's like I always like to give every player, no matter what they've done previously. I don't really judge anybody previously before they play for Rovers. Never do. I always give everybody a chance to do whatever they need to do with me. I always give them each player as well at least 10 games, before I get my judgment on them, let them settle in.
Too reasonable, Danny.
I am no, I'm a very honest and fair, opinionated guy. But it's like with Sharma-Low, he's had a decent start. He's only had one clean sheet so far, but he's only a young lad. You can see the talent there, but with the goalkeeping situation, Wales at the Rovers, that Louis Jones is obviously out of contract at end of season. I don't think he'll be staying much longer, and neither would Ian Lawler. And so that leaves us with no goalkeeper after this season. And it's a bit tetchy. That's the only weak point I will actually say about our squad is the goalkeeper situation. Because we have got depth and strength in every position other than the goalkeeper.
I guess my other question as well is who's that midfield partner for Owen Bailey? Because there's quite a lot of options at the moment. Have you found one yet that you like most?
That's the thing. Combination. I mean, we can do so many different combinations and players in that midfield. It's unreal for this level. I mean, in our midfield, we've got Ben Close, who just come back yesterday, his first game after nearly a good chunk out, since January with an injury. Then we've got legs like Clifton, we've got Paddy Kelly from West Ham, Broadbent even, he had a good pre-season. We've got that much talent that even Joe Sabara didn't even make the 18 on Saturday. Jeez. Joe Sabara, he didn't even make the 18 on Saturday. And that just tells you how much depth, like I said, how much depth we have got. And that's why I'm excited for this season, because I know if anybody gets injured, we can always call on somebody else just as good, just to come in and play.
We've seen that, haven't we? Because Richard Wood's gone injured and James Maxwell's picked up one as well. And it's been Brandon Fleming at left back and then
McGrath. It's been Jay McGrath at centre back. He's a young lad from he's a Donny born, but he never really played for us. He played for his youth team and then he went off and played for another couple of teams, ended up in Ireland, and he ended up coming back. His dad, John, he's played for Burton Albion, Edward. His dad, John,
by the way, John
McGrath
as well.
I'm not gonna lie, put 2 and 2 together then. I'm quite embarrassed. There you go.
John used to play for Donny as well, and that's why he was born in Doncaster, because he was born when John used to play for us. So we brought him back, and he didn't really have best of starts for us last season, Jay, because we bought him from Ireland, and their season finishes in December. So it was like trying to adjust, and he had a few injuries, but this pre-season and these last couple of games, he's been a really good, solid defender. You can see the talent on him. He made that, obviously, goal line clearance against Vale at the weekend, that overhead kick clearance. So, he's a good player, Jay McGrath. But like I said, with Fleming as well, when Maxwell got injured, McCann asked the board to invest. Not invest, but kind of like, look, we need a bit of cover on that left. And they went out and got Fleming. I mean, the board's certainly putting the money where the mouth is at the minute.
Certainly is. I was going to ask you about Harry Clifton, Danny, because
Yeah.
I think against Morecambe at home, Clifton played in very much a pressing role behind Billy Sharp and really pressing right up. And then I think away at Port Vale, it was more of a conventional three-man midfield that he was part of. But I tend to think that when you've got Billy Sharp up top, you probably need Harry Clifton as a destructive 10 because of his energy and work rate, and he's able to cover the ground that maybe Sharpie's less able to. What do you reckon?
With Clifton, yeah, absolutely, he's got the legs. I mean,
Yeah.
he was Grimsby's one of their standout players for about 3-4 years on trot. You know, don't get me wrong, he did have the best of seasons last season, but I don't think anybody did for Grimsby. That's no offence for them. It was a pretty poor season for them, you know. But he's like an homegrown player, and it's like, I think he got a bit of unfair stick from what I've heard from Grimsby fans. You know, obviously, he was an homegrown player. But yeah, I've liked what I've seen of Harry so far. He's been a really good player. He's got plenty of legs. Perfect replacement for Biggins, who obviously left us the end of the season. So yeah, I've been impressed with Clifton. You say about Sharp. I seem to see us now kind of like Billy Sharp, kind of like playing kind of like a Harry Kane kind of style, same as Ironside, where they're kind of like dropping deep into like midfield.
Yeah.
And we've got like Molyneux and Gibson, you know, wingers, inverted wingers, kind of like running into inside. So they're kind of like making the two up top, and it's just going kind of like over to them to with pace. You know, it's working at minute. So yeah, I'm kind of happy we found a different role for Billy.
Well, that's really encouraging. Maybe, perhaps I was wrong about Billy Sharp.
You are, you know, and you're
What
making.
was this? Yeah, what was this? What did you say, Gab?
Billy Sharp.
Did
I wasn't sure about the signing at the time because I wasn't sure whether he'd get through enough.
Have you seen Billy Sharp's career, Gab? Come on.
I know.
Billy Sharp,
Thank you.
what he does.
Yeah. You know, he's scored. He's the most. Sorry, he's a record goal scorer for the Sky Bet Championship. He's not played League Two football since he was on loan to Dagenham and Redbridge from Sheffield United, and that was the beginning of his career.
What year was that? 1981, something like that. It's been around long enough.
But you know what I mean. Though, but he's played top level throughout his career. I mean, no matter what, you know, and age is just a number when you've got talent like Billy Sharp. I mean, you know, yeah, he's a good player.
Certainly is. Ben, do you see Doncaster Rovers being in the promotion mix over the course of the season?
Yeah, I think they're going to go the distance this year after kind of like that late run last year and realising the mistakes they maybe made first half of the year. They've got that continuity with the squad, which I was really big on in my pre-season predictions right through the league, where kind of favoured sides who had that continuity. So Doncaster have got that. They've recruited pretty well, and they weren't kind of held to ransom with Adelakun, who, from what I've heard, asked for an awful lot of money at Doncaster. And I think that kind of thing can cause a bit of squad disharmony. So they probably made the right call there not to bring him back after his loan. But no, I can see them going right the distance. I think the only thing I would say is sort of compared to last year, where you had kind of 3 squads and budgets that were a long way ahead of everyone else, this year it's a bit closer. So while I think Doncaster are going to be somewhere in the top 7, and probably top 3, it wouldn't surprise me if it was the lower end of that top 7, just because of how competitive this division is going to be this year. And all it's going to take is, one side or a couple of sides to really click, and it's way too early to know who that's going to be just yet.
Danny, what do you think Doncaster are going to do this season? Are you more confident about your top 3 chances? Yeah, what do you think?
Absolutely. Like I've just said, our depth is unreal. It's like, for example, against Salford, I know it's only Carabao Cup, but we made like full on 10 changes for that side, and we still look competitive against the Salford side what played basically the first team, you know, and it was like, if we can do that, and we played Everton and we made 6 changes for that, and we kept Everton quiet for an hour, you know, with 6 changes.
I mean,
you know,
let's be fair, everyone's keeping Everton quiet for an hour at the moment.
Oh yeah, but I mean, yeah, but we're League Two. It's not like we're Premier League quality.
I know
you
what
know,
you mean.
you know what I'm saying. It's a bit, you know, our quality in depth is, like I said, it's. I can't see any other side in league being able to do that. Other sides might have a stronger 11, but they haven't got a stronger squad. You know, like I said, I mean, people are get injured. We can just easily replace them. I mean, up top, for example, who do we play? Billy Sharp or Joe Ironside? And then in midfield, like we touched on earlier, look who's stack talent in midfield where Joe Sabara can't even make us 18. You know, we're just stacked, and I can see that pulling us through to end the season, and I'm very confident of us making that top 3 absolutely by end of season.
Very, very confident there from Danny. Listen, Danny, thank you so much for your insight on Doncaster this evening, and best luck for the rest of the season, mate.
Yeah, cheers, thank you. Cheers for having me.
Top man. Delighted to bring in Tom Williams, our co-host now of Notts County. How are you, Tom?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really good to have you on. Thanks for joining us. And we're also joined by Ed from the 1912 Exiles podcast on Newport County.
Good name.
Now, Ed, 3 straight wins for the Exiles, and it doesn't actually surprise me that much, because when I saw you at Cheltenham on the opening day, I did actually think you probably shaded that game and deserved at least the point. So, you know, I felt like you've always had the means to create chances, and it's proved in the last 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, we're not getting carried away just yet. I don't think we've yet played any really kind of stellar teams. And the wins that we've had have come against a not very good Morecambe side, a not very good Accrington side, and a Doncaster side who have stuttered a little bit at the start of the season. And I think we caught them on what will probably be an off day over the course
Although
of the
they did win all their other games, Ed, in the league.
Indeed. Yeah. I mean, you know, they... I think a lot of people expect them to be towards the top end of the table. I certainly do. I think we maybe caught them on a bit of an off day, and I think they will improve as the season goes on. But listen, 3 wins on the bounce in the league. Absolutely delighted. 9 points at the end of August. If you'd offered me that before the season started, I would have bitten your hand off. So we are still a work in progress. There are going to be tougher tests to come, and I think Saturday against Port Vale will be a really good early test. But yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. That first day against Cheltenham, Mike Flynn doing the hex over us, as is often the case, and as was the case last night.
He did again last night, didn't he?
Yeah. So these things happen. But I think, yeah, we've shown that we can score goals, which I think was a concern. Defensively, we've now kept a clean sheet, which I think is a really big thing. And we may come on to talk about it, but the main thing for me is we've shown that we can be pragmatic. You know, we talked, Gabriel, before the season about there's this vision for us to move to playing much more attractive football, and I'm all for that, but you need to mix that with a little bit of pragmatism in this division, and we've shown that we can do that. So the early signs are really good, really positive, and I think it's assuaged some of the concerns that we had going into the season that we would be in a relegation scrap. I still think we're going to need to battle for every last point, but I think it certainly looks as though in the first 11 there is enough quality.
First 11's a good point. I mean, I am going to want to talk Bobby Campbell with you for quite obvious reasons coming up very shortly, but I want to start in midfield because this is the thankful bit for having the end of the window, really. I think as the season started, I was quite worried about the shape of Newport's midfield because it felt like there was Bryn Morris and Aaron Wilding that were key. Morris was injured at the start of the season and has thankfully come back. And then it felt like there's a real drop-off now. So I'm basically asking you, Ed, what's the trio now? Is Cameron Antwi in there? Is it Kai Whitmore? Is it the new lad Miley? Like, if we say Wilding and Morris are the 2, have you looked out who that third guy is to go in there yet?
So I think there's a few questions in there. Wildig, I think, is definitely the starter and the kind of creative engine at the moment. And you've seen, we saw it against Accrington at the weekend. he gets forward and supports the attack. And it's the old cliche, you know, he may be getting on, but the first yard is in his head. His movement off the ball is superb. And he is the best option we've got in that role. I suspect, though, by the end of the season, he will not be the best option we have in that role, because we've already seen, you know, Kai Whitmore came in, played incredibly well, scored a very good goal. He's now injured for the time being, but he looks a really good prospect. We've seen, Bobby Camwer has started in a slightly more advanced role. More on the wing, he's a real kind of bag of tricks. You know, he's quick. He knows where the goal
like
is.
Bobby Camwer.
Yeah, we absolutely love Bobby. He's one who I think a few of us have already said he's not going to be there next season, but we'll enjoy him while he's there. And yeah, Cameron Antwi is the other one who I really like the look of. Pre-season, the thing I said about him is he's always trying something. It doesn't always work, but he's the one trying to pick out the ambitious pass that sets us on the attack. And he's played maybe a slightly deeper role. He's been that kind of quarterback, you know, picking out the pass that suddenly turns us from defence into attack and gets us on the counter. I really like the look of him. I think he's a massive prospect. I think it's going to take a while for us to work out what the best trio is. Bryn Morris, like you say, last season played 50-odd games, started every league game, an absolute rock.
Is he still trying it from 30 yards every now and then?
Yeah, and he will score goals. We love Bryn Morris. He only scores bangers. And he may not be Welsh, but his name's Welsh enough, and we're adopting him. You know, Morris for Wales.
Bryn Morris is Welsh, isn't
it? yeah, exactly. So, the midfield was probably the worry going into the season. Not so much because of a lack of creative options. I think we've got those in abundance. It was, do we have a few grizzled people who can, you know, S-house their way, win the ball back, do all of the kind of dark arts stuff? I think that's still a little bit of an open question. But the thing, again, it comes back to that point earlier about resilience and pragmatism. We've shown that the likes of Antwi have got enough about their game. They've got enough experience in the tank that they can do some of that stuff as well. So despite the fact that we lost Scott Bennett and Harry Charsley at the end of last season, who were massive, they weren't the most creative, but they were massively important at grinding out results. I think these new young lads, they've got a bit about them as well. So again, I feel reassured from what I've seen so far.
And it helps when you've still got James Clark in our defence and McLaughlin just being his normal self, bombing onto wing back as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Clark's injured probably for a month. You know, it's like deja vu all over again with us and centre backs. We just cannot keep a centre back fit for more than about 3 weeks. But you know, we've got some experience there with James Clark. McLaughlin, like you say, he's a real kind of Swiss Army knife. You know, we tended to play him in that right wing back position, bombing forward, but he can play left wing back, he can play central midfield. Again, if we shift from a 5 at the back to a 4, which I think in the long term is what Jardim wants, McLaughlin's role in that new system could be an interesting one. But yeah, again, he's a good option to bring into midfield potentially if we need a bit more grit.
Yeah, hopefully he can provide that. Ed, I wanted to ask you about Bobby Camwer, because when I've seen him
which Ed, sorry? Because I realised it's a question I can answer as well.
Yeah, sorry, Ed. I was going to ask Ed Walker actually for the perspective, because when I've seen him in the first 4 games, he's added an extra layer of, I guess, physicality to his game that I don't instinctively remember from his time at Burton Albion. So, do you think that he sort of bulked up a little bit, Ed?
I would also say as well that there is the chance of that, and that maybe there's the increased opportunities that are coming in now. Because I think the best we saw of Camera at Burton was under Dino, where it was essentially a winger formation. He was being utilised right as a left winger, just given that responsibility to take on his man, go out them 1-on-1. And Burton, under the different managers, went to a change and shift of shape that never really fully maximised him. And it was only really the last couple of games under Martin Patterson where they went to a 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1 shape, and he was back as a winger, and that was working. So coming to Newport, I had a little bit of concern early on they were going to play a 3-5-2, and again, he just wasn't going to find somewhere in that team to fit. But it does feel like Jardim has really found something that works in a kind of supporting role to Courtney Baker-Richardson. Are we saying, really?
Yeah, exactly that. Courtney Baker-Richardson is not the target man in a traditional sense, but he's the kind of
focal
peak
point,
of the attack. Yeah, and Camwer, like you say, is just on that left-hand side, able to cut in, cause problems, and a kind of real live wire. And of course, having him on a slightly more advanced role on the left means that Anthony Glennon perhaps is not doing the thing he would do of like over committing himself forward and leaving gaps behind him because he's got a camera head, so he's got the outlet in front. So that all seems to be quite shrewd. Like I say, I think the starting 11 and the formation is all probably stuff that will gradually evolve and change over the course of the season. But at the moment, we're sticking with a tried and tested formation that the players are comfortable with, and I think we kind of work from there and build from there.
Because I was at the at Morecambe on Saturday, and one thing that really I wasn't so impressed with you, I wouldn't say after the goal, because I think that was a bit more about game management and sort of holding on to it. But I was really impressed that Bryn Morris and Aaron Wildig were so brave on the ball, because I actually thought it was a good Morecambe press. It wasn't like it was half-hearted or they made it easy for you, and you were still able to find your way through it. And I think that speaks to some good coaching from Nelson Jardine, that he's able to implement his ideas to the point that the players are confident enough to execute them even under a little bit of pressure.
Yeah, I mean, Morris and Wildig are the sorts of players who've always had that in their locker. You know, they are technically very good footballers. I think there's an open question about whether some of the defenders who we've had in recent years would necessarily been able to do that. But like you say, the game management has been really good. We saw it at Morecambe, we saw it against Accrington, and that wasn't something that I thought would happen. I thought that would take a while to evolve with such a young and inexperienced squad. But yeah, like you say, we've shown an ability to see out games, and I think that will stand us in very, very good stead.
Is there any chance we see Kieran Brennan go back to the base of midfield like we had at the start?
At the moment, he seems to be playing very well in that back three.
Yeah.
And do you know what? He's been so good. Like the way he came in, and it's like he's been playing in that role in this team forever, and just took care of business. Really, really like Kieran Brennan. If we shift to a 4 at the back, you know, again, he's one who you might see in a more advanced role, and the fact that he's got that flexibility and versatility is really, really good. At the moment, with all the injuries we've got to centre backs, there is no chance of him being moved, I don't think, out of that position. But yeah, it is.
Times like this, you wish Will Evans was still here and you could chuck him on the left or something. Back there.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I quickly ask about Nick Townsend in goal? Are you worried there's maybe before the season started, he wouldn't have been a goalkeeper I would have highlighted as one of the best in the league, but so far he's made like some of the most saves in the whole division. Are you worried there's maybe a reliance on him a little bit? He made 7 saves against Doncaster, which obviously is a huge amount. Is there a worry that his performances might not persist throughout the whole season?
He's not away this weekend, is he?
Well,
yeah, that's a question. I've had a look. I can't find out anything if he's on international.
I don't know where you'd find the Antigua and Barbuda squad nowadays. Where on earth would you go looking for that?
Away on I think we're going to let him go away on international duty, not least because our backup keeper got sent off last night in the trophy. So I think we are going to be relying on Nick Townsend to not go off to the Caribbean for a little break. Look, Nick Townsend is a phenomenal shot stopper. He will always have a bad spell in every season because he always has at Newport. There'll be a couple of games where he will just throw some into his own net. But over the course of a season, Nick Townsend saves you a lot more points than he wins you. The problem or the worry is not about Nick Townsend. It's about, are we giving away too many opportunities in our final third? And that's not on him. That is on the defence that's in front of him. And I think if you've got a fully fit James Clark, you've got a fully fit Kieran Brennan, if all the first choice defenders are there, I think that's less of a worry. It's when you've got to start dipping into the toy box and seeing what else you can dig out. And Carl Jameson is one who his form will go up and down. We've got other young players, the likes of the lad Josh Seabury, Nelson Sanka, who they're very good, but they're young and inexperienced. And it's that worry: is are we going to leave too many opportunities to opponents? And for me, that is the thing that will define probably the next kind of month or so for us. Is we can't keep defying the odds of giving opposition strikers 7 or 8 good chances a game and relying on Nick Townsend. We've got to stop the source.
Hopefully you can do that. I thought his save from, I think it was Gwion Edwards on Saturday. I was honestly, Ed, there was one of the occasions where I've reacted to a goalkeeper's save where I was just like, wow, how has he done that? Just incredible reflexes there from Nick Townsend. So impressive from that point of view. Are you optimistic about the rest of the season or enthused by what you've seen in the first 4 games there now?
Definitely enthused. Optimism doesn't come naturally, and I might hold off that for a little bit longer. But look, we're winning games that I didn't think we would win, like against Doncaster. We are playing games against the likes of Morecambe and Accrington, who I think are probably going to be down at that bottom end, and we're coming away with 3 points. So look, that's all gravy. Let's see how we get on against the likes of Port Vale and Swindon. Those are both going to be really good tests of us. But listen, not like I say, 9 points at this point in the season is really, really good form. There's a lot to be positive about. I think we've signed well in the kind of back end of the window with some of the loan signings who we brought in. We've got plenty of options. If we need to bring a big man off the bench, we've got a 6'9" striker now.
Yeah, good luck with that, I've got to say.
Well, look, I've heard mixed reports to put it mildly, but the fact that we are willing to give ourselves that option from the bench in the games where you need it. I mean, you vision. You've got to be able to be versatile. You've got to be able to have that tall target man to bring on when you're trying to see a game out. And if we've got the tools in the toolbox, that's half the job. So I am cautiously optimistic and a lot happier than I was a month ago. So yeah, this is good.
Brilliant. Well, we wish you well, Ed, and thanks so much for joining us, and keep up the great work on the 1912 Exiles podcast.
Cheers. Always a pleasure. Top
man, Ed. Cheers. So next up, we're going to hear from Tom Large from AFC Wimbledon TV. Here's what he had to say earlier today. If I can just get the video up.
It's going to be the right one this time, isn't it? Last time you said Chesterfield and Bradford
well came up. It's a pleasure to be joining you, albeit a slightly pre-recorded section. But I'll take you through everything so far with Wimbledon's season. 3 wins from 4, 6 wins from 7 in all comps, and what a start it's been. Obviously, Ipswich I'll get onto very shortly, don't you worry. But yeah, let's take a little bit of a chronological trip through our season so far. We started off really strongly. I say started off strongly. We went 2-0 down in 10 minutes, and yeah, we did not think I'd be as optimistic as I am now after that, but came back to win 4-2. A trend of us really coming from behind that plough lane to win games and really see games through, which is really exciting. We then went to Bromley twice in 1 week, beat them in the league. Joe Pigott and Josh Kelly opening their accounts for this season for us, following Amoba Gill and Matty Stevens also scoring. So 2 games in, all 4 strikers had a goal, always nice. And then went to Bromley. Poor performance from us by all accounts. Unfortunately, I was working, so missed that one, but didn't sound like a great day out for us. But we've bounced back from that. We're unbeaten from that point. And yeah, we're looking really, really strong. 3 wins in the league, 1 loss, scoring goals. Clean sheets are coming. Obviously, I won in the Bristol Street Motors Trophy against Wickham. And obviously against Cheltenham too. And Fleetwood on Saturday. So here we go. More clean sheets than I had initially anticipated. But it's been a really strong start. We're playing nice football, playing a 5-3-2 now. As a change from last year's sort of 4-1-2-1-2 diamond variation with wing backs. They're attacking. Jake Reeves controlling the middle of the pitch as per usual, with sort of attacking, box crashing midfielders ahead of him, which is something we hadn't really seen previously, which is really good to see. Attacking intent. James Ball, Ali Smith, Morgan Williams, Callum Maycock and Miles Hippolyte really shaping that midfield up well. Morgan Williams, obviously a young lad, but one with real potential, stepped in when we rested Reeves, and he looked really quality actually in a position that we need covering. So that was really, really encouraging. But no, let's chat about Ipswich quickly. Beating a Premier League team in the Carabao Cup I don't think anyone expected it. Not only to be in such a strong position we were going in to the final sort of 15 minutes. Unfortunately, Owen Goodman dropped the ball, but he recovered that with 2 fantastic penalty saves in the shootout. Isaac Ogundare stepped up, number 5. You're one of our young academy players, and absolutely smashed that home, which was really, 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 really good night at the football club. And yeah, really positive that. And we obviously now welcome Newcastle at Plough Lane off the back of that. But no, fantastic start to the season. We're playing attacking football. We look defensively sound when called upon. We've conceded a few goals, but when Ipswich came to town, We conceded 2, but apart from that, they didn't really have too much of any opportunities. And yeah, we go into a weekend with no football for the first time in what feels like it's been so many games, and especially games at home. It's been nice to actually have a Saturday off, I think. Lots of rest and recovery for the team after a really, really busy schedule. I'm sure they'll be looking forward to having that. But yeah, no, looking forward to the rest of the season. I think we're playoffs as a minimum this year. I think that'll probably be the expectation going into it anyway. Obviously with 2 strong campaigns, but no, really, really positive start to the season, and I'm looking forward to what's to come. Obviously, week on Saturday, we welcome the game that no one wants to play. But last time they came here, Ronan Curtis stepped up in the 94th minute, and I think that was one of the best days of my footballing life, 1,000,000%. And I think we'll be looking to replicate that, hopefully in slightly more less dramatic fashion and a more complete performance. But look, we're in fantastic form. They're not in such great form, which is always nice to see. But yeah, I think positive season ahead. Let's get a week on Saturday out of the way and really crack on with our season. But yeah, for me, I'd say I imagine you'll be asking for a prediction at the end. I'm going to go middle of the playoffs or automatics, which is quite bold from me. But I think it's going to be a good season for Wimbledon.
I love the subtle little digs.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom Large speaking there from AFC Wimbledon TV. Tom, what do you make of Wimbledon? Because for me, I find them a little bit one-dimensional. I think first half of last season, you had Omar Bajil flicking them on for Ali Al-Hamadi in the first half of last season, and even Josh Kelly. Do you know what? I think I prefer Kelly as a partner to Bajil than maybe Joe Pigott, because I feel like Bajil needs someone who's quick and nippy to sort of run on the end of things, and I don't know if Pigott necessarily does that, perhaps.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I'm a massive fan of Josh Kelly, and I think obviously he's not here to defend himself, so I don't want to go in too much on the prediction. But I think it's I love the optimism, but I think it's very ambitious to say minimum playoffs and maybe automatics. Maybe that's me. I think so. I think that's a fifth. That's middle place is fifth, isn't it? Fifth or above. I think that's fifth is ambitious in my opinion for Wimbledon. Really, yeah. I think that. I think where do you think you think they're a top 5 side?
I would say top 7. I would certainly say I'm very big. I think we've just spoken about Doncaster's depth. I love Wimbledon's depth just the same. Great striker options. I love that back 3. Johnson and Lewis were great last year. It's been added into further by getting Riley Highbottle in as an option is great with Isaac Derry coming through. Owen Goodman added to defence, he had a couple of howlers at Colchester, but generally was really impressive. I found on loan from Crystal Palace and coming up another level now. Jake Reeves just bossing it in midfield like Jake Reeves does, just a standard from him. And it's weird to think. You think back to Wimbledon last year, we felt like you'd lose Ali Al-Hamadi. That was a large chunk of the goals and they were going to suffer. I think maybe they won't have a guy who gets exceptional numbers like that again, but I do like the striker depth that's around. And this time, 12 months ago, it felt like James Tilley was one of their key men. He's the backup wing back now. There's just other people that have just gone way ahead of him in the order. I like Neufville as well. I didn't think Neufville would ever be a wing back when I saw him at Sutton, but he's really fitted in really well there. James Sterling on the side. I love having Alistair Smith in the middle, Miles Hippolyte's options in the middle. I think there's a great first 11 here and a good amount of options off the bench as well. I really, really like this team.
Yeah, I think you're right about depth, definitely. I think that maybe it comes to what Gab said about the one-dimensional of their side, and perhaps also, I don't want to be too critical of Johnny Jackson, but it's very early days in terms of a change of shape has worked. But they had a strong start last season, and they kind of failed to adapt, I feel.
Well, Ed, can I give if we compare them with Walsall, for instance, where you've got somebody like Connor Barrett getting to the byline and cutting the crosses back. With Wimbledon, I feel like the chances, certainly against Fleetwood, that they've created, it's been set pieces, it's been sort of deliveries from a really deep positions. And sort of long balls to Omar Bajil or sometimes Joe Pigott, who isn't really a target man. But I don't know. I sort of have reservations about whether when opposing sides figure out a way of dealing with that line of approach, whether they're going to find alternative ways of cutting teams open on a consistent basis. That for me remains a question mark about Wimbledon.
So we're waiting. You kind of make it sound like it might be a case of second time around could be the tricky one for them when the opposition gets familiar with them. Because we've seen it with some sides before where they start quite well, and then that second time comes around, the opposition's a bit more understanding what's coming.
Yeah, there could be an element of
that.
Could potentially. Interesting. So what about, would you say top 7 for Wimbledon there, Ed?
Yeah, I feel quite good about that at the moment. I'm very big on what's been added, as I've said already. I like this group. The only real downside was that Bromley game. That's really only real blemish on anything in any competition, quite frankly, that they've had at the moment. And maybe that was a little bit of a case of Bromley being on a buzz at the back of promotion, knowing that it's their derby to a degree. It's the South London clash that we have now, and took advantage of the occasion, even though Wimbledon had just beaten them, I think the week prior. No, just a few days prior, actually. It was the exact same fixture that had just been played in the League Cup beforehand. I'm big on Wimbledon. I think this start is something that could be maintained, and maybe there is still a need to show another dimension. But at the same time, when you have someone like Omar Bagil, you can just hit crosses up to him, Gab, because he just will get that output out of him. He's a very, very hard player to handle at this level.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. Tom, what about you?
Sorry.
Would you say? Do you think Wimbledon get top 7?
No, is my answer.
Okay.
No, I don't. I think they'll be sort of upper mid-table personally, but that's I maybe I haven't seen enough of them or from them from the opening games to say that my opinion's massively changed on them. I think they're a good, solid team, like a very solid team. And like the point on depth is like, yeah, it's perfectly valid. I'm just not sure. I think they've quite got that X factor that I'm maybe looking for in some of the teams, but I could be proven wrong because obviously they have had a pretty strong start, to be fair to them.
Notts County then, Tom. A couple of moments of magic on Saturday from
This
David.
is the X factor he's talking about now, isn't it? This is what he's referring to.
Certainly is. Dave McGoldrick. I mean, hopefully there's more where that came from.
Yeah, I mean, he probably wouldn't have started if Jatta didn't have concussion. So the concussion protocols, and so that is obviously a massive bonus that he pulled that performance out and sort of saved us, to be honest, because it was not a great performance. And part of me is like, that's great. We've won, and we've won a game that last season we wouldn't have got anything from if we perform like that. And part of me is like, I'm always performance over results. So I'm like, if we perform like that every week, McGoldrick's not going to put 2 in the top corner every week. But overall, it's a massive positive having a player of his caliber, and he doesn't even make the first 11 really. So having someone of his quality in the side, in the squad, that's kind of what we need him for. I think if you could get double figures out of him, which we should do, bear in mind the other options we've got in the squad, then we've probably had a pretty good season.
Is there some encouragement, Tom, that even when Notts County have a below par performance at Swindon, as you've mentioned, and you weren't at your creative best, you still only conceded 1 goal, and that was a strike from distance after a sort of turnover. I think Jack Hinchy played it to Curtis Edwards, and he couldn't quite get hold of it. But I'm just wondering, do you think with the defensive personnel with Jacob Adele and the difference that he's made, do you think you're a bit more resilient this season?
Massively. And I think Alex Bass in goal has a big part to play for that as well. And to be fair, it's running with a better team, but I'm not sure they created like absolutely loads of massive chances. Bass had a lot of saves, but a lot of them straight at him. But obviously they can be sort of difficult to deal with, dipping, bouncing just before him. But overall, he's just given like a whole sense of confidence, I think. And I think that's a big thing, not just with the Notts defenders, but also the fan base. I think we've had not a keeper for a long time, which we've had, like really believed in. So I think that having Alex Bass is kind of half the battle, having the fans behind your keeper. If he makes a mistake, which he hasn't really yet, I'm pretty sure he'll have the backing of the support because he's had such a solid start. I mean, Aidan Stone, for example, was sent off on the opening day last season. So it's kind of a huge contrast in terms of the confidence in the new number one.
It's wild to think Sutton won 5-1 on opening day and then went down.
Yeah, crazy, isn't it? And they beat us again at Meadow Lane as well. So
They did actually, yeah.
Yeah, so it's
9 goals against you.
Yeah, glad they've gone. Sorry, Sutton, if you're watching. But I mean, yeah, like really happy with the resilience, like you say. We have got resilience in our side, and I think there's been a few times this season already. Fleetwood, for example, coming back in that game, we wouldn't have done that in last season probably. So there's a lot more resilience in the squad, I think, for sure.
So is that the Fleetwood one's the interesting one to me? Is that a case? Did you come out of that, Tom, thinking great resilience, or did you also look at that and go, "We've gone 2-0 down to Fleetwood here at home"? So where do you kind of sit on that?
Yeah, I mean Fleetwood. I know I'm kind of contradicting myself in terms of like I'm rating Fleetwood. I don't want to say like I've not rated Wimbledon. I think Wimbledon are good, but Fleetwood have been a pretty decent side. Like they've played well in a lot of games. They've kept a lot of the ball. They didn't really have a sniff of the possession at Meadow Lane, and I think that I think it was really disappointing the way we conceded the second goal. That was massive alarm bells in terms of could it be the same as last season? But the resilience we showed to stick with what we're doing and create a lot of chances. And I know that the stats look really good because of the game state. Like we were chasing the game and they were just sitting in. So I know it looks a bit more skewed. But if you do look at that, we deserved a point at least. And I think in most games we've deserved, like the Grimsby performance was excellent. And I think overall, like it's been a good start to the season, whilst also knowing that I think we can get better. I mean, that's the key thing is that it doesn't feel like we've really got truly going yet. So I think that's probably the most positive thing is that like, I don't think we're even probably at 70% of where we can be, and I think that is, and we're unbeaten. So I think that's a positive sign.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting to me, Tom, is Jody Jones, because I saw the Swindon highlights and I thought, I'm not going to say Jody Jones has suddenly become this amazing defensive wing back, but it feels like he's at least getting in the right defensive positions now. It feels like he's putting a foot in. It feels like he's really trying in that regard, and maybe there's a bit of instruction for him to be a bit more aware. Obviously, he switched sides, having been on the left last season, played on the right at Swindon, but it feels like there's a bit of a shift on emphasis with Jody Jones, which I think could be really helpful.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it does feel like he's a bit more defensive and a bit more reserved. I think that's partly because he's on the right hand side, so he probably isn't flying down the wing as much as he was on the left. But what is totally for me is to say bizarre, but he feels like he's had a bit of a slow start to the season, but he's got 5 goal contributions in 5 games. So he's not.
That is a slow start to Joey Jones, to be fair.
No, that's true. Yeah, exactly. But it does feel like he's not really got going yet, and he's got 5 goals. Like that's kind of the standard he set for himself. Yeah, it's on Jody. It's really exciting because I think he is at his best on the left. I completely get Wiseman Hughes on the right, and I think in theory he should work equally as well, if not better, on the right because that's where he played as a winger earlier on and could cut on his left and stuff like that. But I just think on the left hand side, hopefully we can get him back out there with Kellen Gordon, kind of making his debut and that sort of more natural whip on the crosses could be good for.
Yeah,
I did love this depth, by the way, that Gordon's added in when you got Cerula and Chickson already as options on there. It's some lovely wide options in this team.
Yeah, massive wing back options are excellent.
Yeah, well, I mean, what I was thinking about the difference of Jody Jones on the left versus Jody Jones on the right. You're right that when he plays on the left, the crosses are going to be much more dangerous because they're like whipped in, and it's hard to execute that same sort of threat, if you like, on the right. But what I'm wondering is there an advantage in terms of the relationship with his corresponding wide centre back? Because maybe it's harder to do that when you're playing on your natural side because you're sort of facing what's the ground ahead of you, if you like, if that makes sense at all. Whereas on the right, there's more of an emphasis on cutting inside, and maybe there's a bit of a window for Lewis Macari to overlap, or for a midfielder to overlay the flank, and actually different types of link up coming into his game.
Yeah, Lewis Macari, that's a big point. The thing with Jody is obviously teams know what he's about and know he's the danger man, so they do double up on him. I know it's a kind of a cheap thing to say, they double up on the best player, but genuinely a lot of the time they do send 2 men to go press him, and it then forces Macari into overlapping, and then he drags a player away, and that's when you see Jody then kind of able to take on the man or cut inside. And that relationship between Macari and Jones is actually, like you mentioned, is actually quite strong. And I've been impressed with Lewis Macari's attacking output, maybe not output, but attacking sort of impetus to get down the right hand side a lot more than I perhaps thought he might have done and was perhaps capable of. Because I know he's been a right back before, but he does feel like a very stay at home right back, but actually does get forward quite a lot. He's perhaps not someone you'd associate with having that quality in the final third, but he's definitely putting more effort into to make those runs. So it's some good relationships on that side for sure.
Final one, Tom, has to be striker situation because the goal machine has gone. Hindsight, maybe Millwall was a bad choice. Maybe that's a different conversation. Well, there might be talk about that some other time, I'm sure. I love Jatta. I really like this all-round game he seems to have. I love the build to him as well. He doesn't feel like it's going to be as lethal as Langstaff does, but he really does feel like it's just been a really great find, a really nice fit in that line.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, briefly on the Millwall thing, I think you're right. I think it's the wrong choice. Their subsequent additions up front as well. This kind of makes you worry for Maka. But in terms of Jatta, like massively excited by him. I think he's
just got a bit more presence than Maka had, you would say.
Definitely, 100%. I think that's the one criticism of him at Tranmere was that he actually, for someone so big, it's weird. In some games, he gets too involved with defenders and puts himself about a bit. And I think at Tranmere, he was a little bit not involved enough. Like he didn't want to gamble and fight with the defenders. So maybe he's learning from last season where he kind of got a little bit too embroiled at times. But I mean, he's fantastic. He's quick and strong, and I mean, he should get a lot of goals. But also you got Dave McGoldrick, who I don't think will play. Well, he won't play every week, or he won't start every week for certain. But what I liked about McGoldrick against Swindon was that he just pulled the trigger, which he didn't do enough last season. I felt a lot of the time last season he was trying to find that pass or that.
I feel quite down on McGoldrick. Maybe this is unfair because he came in off the back of that Derby season where he carried them. He carried them to a near playoff spot, and I had such excitement for him coming down into League Two. I thought it was going to be sensational, and he wasn't quite that. No, and maybe I'm still haunting a little bit like that. This idea, it's McGoldrick, but he wasn't anymore. But then you see the Swindon game and you think, he can still do it, can't he? He can still pull out those moments.
He can. He has had a slowish start, and I think that's part of it. He missed the penalty in the EFL Cup, but it was terrible. He tried to get Panenka in and went over. So he has had poor moments this season already, and I'm not expecting him to replicate the Swindon performance every week or even every other week. But it's the fact that we have got that in the locker. I still think we perhaps could have done with another forward in the window. If I'm going to be totally transparent, I still think we're maybe another one short. I know we found Brown on deadline day. That's another story. But in terms of, I think we still like an out-and-out centre forward, maybe short. But because Jatta was obviously injured, you've asked that question a lot this season already, Gab, and he was injured for that game against Swindon. Yes, McGoldrick stepped up, but can that happen every week?
Out. Also, Tommy's a completely different type of player to Jatta, isn't he? So it's like there's a bit of an adjustment there. So that's not ideal. Hopefully, he can hold out till January, and Jatta can start 20 odd games between now and then. But I'm going to ask you, Tom, are you feeling more optimistic than you were before the start of the season about Notts County's promotion chances? A bit less, or roughly the same?
Definitely more optimistic. I think it's a combination of our performances and also the league. I know it was quite a wide open league anyway, but I think it's even more open than I perhaps realised. I think there's not. I mean, Doncaster probably look the most dangerous team, but again, I have questions over not sustainability, but they're so good at ball striking and things like that. But in games that it doesn't work, they could Newport come up against a keeper who saves everything. Then they could. There are games they'll drop points in as well. So I think that's part of the reason why I'm optimistic. And I think the second one, again, I like the double up thing. I think it's really simplistic, and sometimes I loathe to be simplistic in terms of to say if you keep clean sheet, we've got the quality on our team to
it feels as if it's so much better than last year's.
Yeah,
it's just still so much better, that group.
Exactly, and I think that whilst it does feel very simple to say, if we get that defensive right, we've got the attacking players to go and do it. The Goldrick kind of showed that. We kept the scoreline down and we had that individual quality to go, okay, right, there's 2 goals. As long as we only can see 1 or 2 a game, I think most games we're likely to score 2 or 3 in. So because of the players we've got. I know we didn't against Tranmere. Ben will probably be happy to remind me of that. But in terms of game to game, we've got the quality. I mean, Jatta, McGoldrick, Jones, Crowley, we've got so many quality attackers, so it's quite exciting.
Well, who would have thought Jacob Bernay would be the difference maker? But no, I mean, I think we've not really got on to Dan Crowley yet, but him against Grimsby, honestly, that was absolutely stunning performance. That was possibly the best individual performance of the League Two season so far. So his vision is just unbelievable, really. So I think when you've got Dan Crowley, he can certainly create things and make things happen. Coming on to Gillingham, then we had a message from a friend of the podcast, Matt Boosie from Gills in the Blood TV. Here's what he had to say on Gillingham's start: 10 points for the first 4 games.
Given all the injury problems and challenges that have been thrown Mark Bonner's way so far, it's been a really encouraging start for the Gills, and I couldn't be happier with 10 points from 12 so far. I think the biggest plus for me is the fact that there's been very different types of win in our opening quartet of games. And of course, it's nice to proudly sit top of the league, but it is only 8.5% through the season. So plenty of work to do. Mark Bonner is very big on that, keeps saying we have to take care of today and the next game. And then obviously further down the line will hopefully take care of itself if we keep getting the next game correct. But yeah, really encouraging start. It was great fun watching us put 4 past Carlisle on the opening day, purely because we've not done that enough in recent seasons. I think it was 3 years pretty much since we last scored 4 in a league game. So to do that first up was really, really encouraging. I think as the time I recalled, we've now got 3 of the new signings off the mark in Jacob Wakelin, Jack Nolan and most recently Elliot Nevitt, albeit that one was in a league trophy game, but it'd be good for Elliot to have got some minutes. But yeah, back to the other league games. Obviously, we went to Morecambe, a team that under Derek Adams, we know regardless of the quality of their players, is going to be a team that works really hard for a club that continually wants to prove people wrong. So to go there and be resolute, defend our box really well, and then find a way to pinch a winner through George Lapsley was really pleasing. I think the point at Fleetwood was really decent as well. Again, loads of people missing through injury and suspension. We were second best. I totally understand that. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that we weren't. But what we did, again, was we made sure that we were hard to beat. We did have chances second half to win the game, but I think that would have been very unfair on our host. So a point was probably just about right. And it meant an unbeaten start for both sides at the time. And of course, just last Saturday, we took on a Chesterfield side who many have tipped to be in and around the playoffs at worst. And we did have to play the last 30 minutes with 10 men, which we knew was going to be tough. If you look at Chesterfield's front 4 on the afternoon of Dylan Markande, who else have they got? Will Grigg, Dobra, Berry. These are players that are very, very good at the level and have started the season very, very well. And they've still got more to come back. So that was a really pleasing result in the fact that we took our chance when it came first half, having been on the back foot initially. But out of possession, we were bloody good for 30 minutes in making sure that the game was played in front of us. So for me, Carlisle was the most fun win, but Chesterfield was probably the most important and is the type of victory that ultimately could make a difference. So yeah, really, really pleased with the dual start as we currently sit top of the table.
Matt Boosie there from Gills in the Blood TV. Ed, a really strong start from Gillingham in terms of results. I'm a little bit, I'd like to see a little bit of a different level from them in terms of performance, because when you think about it, the 4-1 against Carlisle, I think they were very good for a certain period and then dropped off, and yeah, they had some shaky moments, and 4-1 was maybe a bit of a false scoreline, you might say. Morecambe, bit of a smash and grab. Chesterfield, I would argue Chesterfield might have been the better side. So I feel like, yes, they're getting the results, but I would like to see them sort of lift their levels and find a different gear, almost exactly like we were talking about them in the first
Basically, you've said that about every team. We need another gear out of all of them. Yet this is why we're putting the argument forward how competitive this league is, that like everyone's good but not perfect yet. So like no one's running away with this, and it's going to stay quite a tight back.
Yeah, I think Walsall are definitely hitting the gears. Like I wouldn't say Walsall are a sort of short on the thing. I think they've probably been the standout side so far.
And they're in the mix, and there's other teams around with them. That Chesterfield game for Gillingham, I think that should have taken place in April, not August. Just the manner of how it went. It felt like the kind of thing you need to do, like end of the season, scrappy, get yourselves over the line, get the pressure.
A little bit frantic.
It was the wrong time of the year for it. I wish it was an April game rather than an August game. And it's a bit of a situational one that Gillingham. You're not going to play with 10 men for 30 minutes every single time. But God, the Steels team's so good. I think I said this last week or 2 weeks ago. The options around are really fantastic. Again, it still feels like at the minute we're not seeing full strength Gillingham yet in terms of personnel, and yet here they are, 10 points from a possible 12. Yes, had to get out the gritty side on occasions to get over the line with those, but I'm encouraged by it.
Yeah, I think they've shown resilience, definitely. Like the Morecambe game came the week after they'd done lots of travelling, like to Swansea in midweek, and then, like you say, the Chesterfield was against 10 men. But I actually felt like with Amani Little and Robin McKenzie, they were both very aggressive against the ball, and sometimes a bit too aggressive, and there was a bit of a gap sometimes between their midfield and defence from the highlights that I saw. So I just wonder about them. I just want to see something a little bit different. I know I'm holding them to high standards here, but if you want to be a top 3 side, I feel like they're going to have to just raise their level a little bit.
Yeah, I think that was how Cambridge played when Mark Bonner got them promoted a few years ago, though. They didn't really, from my memory, ever put in a flashy performance where you could go, wow, that was a really good League Two side there. They churned results out. They were hard to beat. They had Wes Houlihan feeding Paul Mullin, and they kind of, I think you can see a lot of similarities with this Gillingham side. So I think you kind of say you want to see more from them, but I think this is kind of what Gillingham will be this season, and I think it's going to work well for them because they've got a really strong squad and probably the best backline in the league. So I think that's kind of what Gillingham are going to be this year, and in a crowded field where everyone's going to take points off each other. If there's one side who's really consistent, which might be Gillingham, then they could be the ones who do get the top 3 spot.
I think it's a great point about that in terms of the manager. It's kind of how I feel about Gillingham. That, again, like I mentioned before, I'm always performances over results, and the performances so far for Gillingham have been lackluster, and therefore that would dictate that you would expect a drop off. But I think with Mark Bonner, I don't know whether it's just because he's a really likable guy or whether what it is about him, but he has something about him where you just sort of believe in. So any other manager, any other team, I'd be saying, well, come on, this is going to not be sustainable. But there's just something about the squad that they put together, like Ed was saying, sort of the quality they've got in that side is just unbelievable. You match that with the back line they've got, and then a manager who's got not only a proven track record, but just seems to have that something about him that can get not just the players believing, but the fan base believing, I think, as well. And he has that element of almost he's happy. Like a lot of managers would be going, well, we're striving for more. We want to hit that next gear. We want to. He's saying, well, yeah, we're not probably at our best, but we're picking up points. So as long as we're getting points on the board, it's kind of all that matters. And if they keep doing it, which I know last season they won about 1 million games 1-0 at the start of the season, and then eventually dropped off. So they've got to be wary of that. But I do think that it feels a lot different. They've had similar performances and results to the Neil Harris team, but the Mark Bonner, the whole feel and the atmosphere of the club feels completely different to they did 12 months ago.
Sure. Yeah, no, I do see that. I just there's just something. I think I look at Chesterfield and some of the football that they've played so far this season, where they're getting sort of Dobra in the pockets, and I actually felt 1 or 2 occasions where McKenzie and Little actually weren't really picking up Dobra, and he was able to kind of get away between the lines. And I just think you've got to be a little bit careful. Like on that occasion, it wasn't punished, but I'm just wary. It's. I do really agree with you on Mark.
I mean, if I would make a prediction, Gab, I don't think many will mark Dobra this season. He's just that kind of player.
Yeah, how do you stop him? Yeah.
Do you not think he's one of the most underrated players, one of the most underrated players in the league? Because he doesn't often, if you think of your list League Two star players, I don't think he'd jump to my head as one of them. But when you actually say
Amanda Dobra,
yeah, well, we said
he hasn't been in this league for ages. Yeah, that's why. Anyone who's watching him in the National League, Tom, will know this guy's pretty damn good.
He is. But I just think even if you say Chesterfield, people go Greg or or Berry or Mark.
I've got one for me. I mean, we've spoken Chesterfield before, Gab. You know, there's Grigg, Banks, and Naylor, the standout names, but I always said the depth behind and around Grigg is just sensational to them. The Dobra, you could like him on the left, but he could play through the middle because you've got Barry McNally who can go on the left. There's Hobson in there. There's Jacobs in there. Colclough when he's available. Mandeville when he's available.
Do you know what, though, Ed? I think that attacking quartet that we're seeing at the moment, I think it's going to be hard for anyone to dislodge that until it gets to like
the
volume of games, because they rotate and interchange so well. I mean, I love Dobra and his sort of agility and his ability to kind of find space, and he's such a deft operator in the final third. But then I also love McCanday for similar reasons. I mean, he's been a great pickup, hasn't he?
And Paddy Madden to return at some point. Well, he might well take their all up just behind Grigg and have Grigg with Madden playing off them as well. Lovely
it's
group.
insane. I think, like we mentioned, depth of teams, but I think they could have attacking depth, possibly the best. Like, because you mentioned those players there,
That's a good argument.
Yeah, they could have 4 injured, and you wouldn't actually be like that worried because they've got number 4 or 5 to come in. Like, it's ridiculous, and how they'll keep them all happy if they're all fit, which I think maybe that's part of why they have so many, because they've got a couple that do pick up consistent injuries. So maybe that's why. But I mean, yeah, it's ridiculous the amount of depth they've got. I mean, even like in other positions they're pretty well stocked, but in terms of forward positions, it's a joke.
It's odd, isn't it? Because it's like Chesterfield are only on 5 points, like half the points tally. No, I know, but I suppose it's just. I mean, I think Chesterfield are going to put a real run together. But it's interesting to note we're talking about them in such glowing terms, and yet they've only got 5 points. But I'm very confident that they're going to be. I'm actually more confident about Chesterfield than I was before the start of the season in how they've looked at their best. Tranmere, Ben, what do you think Tranmere can do?
A couple of question marks still. It's really hard to know because we haven't got to see anything close to our full strength side yet. You know, we started the season with lots of key players out injured. So Sam Finley, who kind of stepped down from League One, he hasn't played a game yet, and Josh Hawkes, who kind of I'd hoped would take over Rob Apter's kind of mantle from last season. He's been out so far as well. And then on top of that, you know, we've had Kieran Morris got injured against Notts. Norris has been out. Hendry's been out. Walker's been out. The whole back line's been injured at some point. So it's been very stop-start. I think the side we put out at Carlisle on the weekend probably only had 5 or 6 out of what is our best 11. And yet, you know, we still found a way to, you know, get the win. We were very hard to break down again, which has been, you know, a running theme against all
Campbell looks excellent, doesn't he?
Yeah. I mean, the back line's been terrific so far. I can only really remember one kind of key chance against us so far this season, if we ignore the Leicester game, which was one Jatta had in the first game of the season when he had a header about 8 yards out. Other than that, we've kind of been restricting opposition sides to pot shots from 20-25 yards, which is fine because I think in Luke McGee we've got one of the best shot stoppers in the league. That's his real strength. So if sides are kind of limited to that, you know, taking shots 20-25 yards out, whereas kind of last season we were, certainly first half of the season before Adkins really settled in, we were getting cut open way too often. Sides were getting behind us, you know, lots of one-on-ones with the keeper. Those kind of situations have all disappeared now. So we've got that really solid foundation to build from. And we've had a bit of a blessing in that our game this weekend against Wimbledon has been postponed due to them having international call-ups. But the reason that's a good thing for us is when we then come to play Gillingham the following week, we should have 4 or 5 players back from injury.
Nice.
So I believe they're playing a behind closed doors game this weekend, which Luke Norris, Regan Hendry, Kieran Morris, Sam Taylor are all going to be back from injury and playing in, which gives us a bit of depth and probably means that there'll be a couple hard decisions who actually misses out on the bench. Yeah, we've had Josh Williams and Sol Solomon, who both came up from non-league on the bench. they might miss out, but I've been quite impressed with both of them when they have played this season. So yeah, there's that. It's just whether, with that solid foundation, if we can improve a bit in the final third. So far this season we've been really solid. As I say, we haven't conceded chances, but at the same time we haven't created enough. And is it sustainable to, keep, scoring 1 out of 8 chance kind of thing?
Amari Patrick can't keep whipping them forever.
No, we scored a really nice worked corner routine on the weekend. A few 1-2s from the corner, and then Patrick left-footed into the far corner. So that's really nice sort of team goal and finish, but it's also from outside the box. So you can't, as you say, you can't keep doing that. So I'm kind of hoping that Norris comes back from injury, Morris comes back from injury, and we've got more of a settled front line there. And with any luck, Sam Finley won't be too far off, because while Leo Connor does a really good job defensively and his work rate's second to no one in the league, his passing and ball retention leaves a little bit to be desired. So I was looking before we came on air, and I believe we've had the lowest possession in the league so far, the lowest average possession.
That's a badge of honour for you, isn't it, Ben?
It is, but it's not as bad as it sounds, I don't think, because our average possession has been basically dead on 40%. But then you look at a couple places higher, and Gillingham have averaged 40.9%. So I think it's just part of it's stylistic, and the other part has been that missing Morris and Finley and Hendry, who are probably going to be our 3 best guys on the ball in terms of the ball retention, pass completion, all those kind of things. So when they come back, we'll see a natural improvement just with more technical ability in there. But it's whether we're going to have enough to consistently break sides down. And I think after the Notts County game, I replied to something Tom said, and I basically said that I think we will have the most draws in the league this year, because we're going to be really hard to break down with the way we play and how strong our back line is with the additions of Norman and Bradshaw. But then on the flip side, we don't have that individualism of Apter this season. And
do you know what, Ben? I think Amari Patrick brings elements of Apter's individualism in that he can conjure something up out of nothing, but I don't think I would feel as scared as a defender with Amari Patrick running at me as I might with Rob Apter running at me.
That's absolutely fair. I think one of the big things Nigel's tried to do to address what that pretty obvious lack of final third creativity is looking very heavily at set pieces. So last season we conceded, I think it was something like 17 or 18 goals from set pieces, the most in the league. And at the same time, we only scored a couple. So that was a massive deficit on set pieces. So the profile of play he's brought in over the summer, it sounds a bit basic, but Norman's over 6 foot, Bradshaw's over 6 foot. And things like that. So he's tried to change the profile of the side slightly. And although it's early days, we had a passing move from a corner, which we scored from, and we also scored direct from a set piece, whereas we haven't really looked troubled defensively from them so far this season. So I think it'll be those, there'll be a lot of fine margins, and maybe kind of what I was getting at with Gillingham, although they've got better squad than us, probably a similar kind of idea that the games are all going to be really competitive and fine margins, and I think more often than not we will come out on the right side of that, but it's just whether we can do it consistently enough to get a comfortable playoff spot.
Top 7, that's the big question. Tom, what have you made of Notts County, obviously having faced them on the opening day? Tranmere, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. I knew what you meant. And I think that what Ben just said, the final point about the fine margins, I think that's why I'm quite confident on Tranmere, because I think they have got, it's going to sound a bit of a contradiction considering the availability issues they've got, but I think they've probably got the fittest team in the league. In terms of the players that are out on the pitch are always going to be, you'd back them 9 times out of 10 to outwork and outrun the opposition. And I think if they can be hard to break down, really well drilled, and make every game like a bit of a battle for the opposition, they're going to like outwill them almost a lot of the time. And it's not necessarily going to be the prettiest. I'm not saying it's like terrible football, but it's not going to be the prettiest a lot of the time. But I think they will just simply outwill a lot of teams. And I think Omari Pratchett's a really good point to make as well. Like, I actually really like him. I think he's got that little bit of X factor that I was talking about earlier. I think he can create something out of nothing. And I think he's a quarter of the way to Rob Apter's goal tally already. I know that's obviously a bit deceptive. I think
if he plays Carlisle every week, he'll be at it like that.
Yeah, the underlying stats are very similar to what Rob was putting out last season in terms of the amount of dribbles and all those kind of things. And I think he's really benefiting from having a much freer role than he had at Sutton, and maybe kind of the role he wanted at Carlisle that Paul Simpson wouldn't give him. Which is basically hugging the touchline and then cutting in. So he's played both flanks so far, but I think he does prefer being on the left. It's just whether he can sustain that over a season. I mean, speaking to fans of other clubs, it's kind of, well, he does it in flashes, but he won't do it over a full season. So I guess it'll kind of, if he does tail off, it's whether how long till Josh Hawkes is back from injury, and then can he sort of pick up? Because although he didn't have great minutes last year, he still returned 6 goals and not many starts. So
the only thing that's kind of alarmed me a little bit, it feels like Tranmere's biggest threat is wide rather than up top. I like this team from the back up to like sort of the midfield line. Whilst there's striker options, I need to warm to them. I think Luke Norris should be the guy, but like him, Jennings, Dennis, have their best periods been elsewhere previously before that?
I don't think Dennis is in the equation. I did say pre-season he looked sharper in pre-season and a bit fitter, which at the time was accurate, but he's shown nothing so far in actual competitive games, which suggests it'll be more of the same of what we saw last season, where he really struggled. I think Davidson was, I don't want to go too early, but I think he was quite a poor signing, especially with some of the rumoured financials on that. I think we could have done better there. I'm pinning a few hopes on Harvey Saunders to come good this year. We've had a lot of cases over the past sort of 10, 15 years where we've developed strikers and then they've gone on to do better at other clubs, Paul Mullin being the obvious case there.
Carl Stockton, I suppose, to an extent as well.
Yeah, I mean, because Mullin was kind of second fiddle to Norwood at Norwood's prime. But I think with Saunders so far this season, he's shown a bit more football IQ than he did last year. In terms of his raw pace, he's absolutely lightning fast. So you would kind of hope that he can make them runs in behind and really stretch sides. And when he does get in behind, can he pick the right pass? Or if he's through on goal, can he pick the right moment to take his shot and not go too early or too close to the keeper? So far this season, he has made the correct decision there twice. Got a decent assist for Davidson in the Tim Pot Trophy I hate, but and then he had another moment in the league. So I think we might see a little bit more from Saunders, but in general, I would say centre forward's probably our weakest spot. Everywhere else, I'm pretty confident. So
I was just looking at the forward options, and I have to agree with that. Like, they've got a lot of options up top, but they're all a bit like.
I don't know who's the source of goals in that. I think it's Luke Norris, I would want to say.
But
I'm not sure.
these injuries
I'm not certain also he's a particularly high number.
No, I think what we're probably looking for, if you say you need 60 goals for us to get promoted, because we're not going to concede too many, you'll need probably 10s and 12s from 3 or 4 players. So you'll presumably get that from Omari Patrick. Kieran Morris turned those numbers out last season. Luke Norris.
Would you say Morris is a goal? I think of Morris as a.
He's not a goal scorer, but he's a scorer of brilliant goals, and he does it frequently enough that I think he will.
He's more like 5 or 6, isn't it? Though.
No, I think last season he was unlucky not to get a couple more, and he still returned 10.
Get 10, right? Okay, right.
And And then, as I say, Josh Hawke's got 6 and probably only started half a dozen games.
Yeah.
Most of the time it was kind of coming off the bench for 10 minutes. And so, yeah, I think we need 10 or 12 goals from 3 or 4 players, and then we'll pick up
the
goals.
defence, like Tom Davis, might get a few from the back.
Yeah,
John Turnbull.
Yeah, Davis, Norman, Bradshaw, Turnbull might get a couple each, with kind of us being a bit better on set pieces this year, and then you might get a couple of piece kind of things from Hendry and Finley.
Yeah.
It does kind of put a lot of pressure on the defence to stay strong all season, because we're not going to consistently at least be able to score several goals. So
yeah, I don't think you're going to have a big numbers player, are you, this season? So that's
no. If you say that generally in League Two you need to score about 70, 75 goals to get promoted, I think we will need to do it off a lower number.
Do you know what, Ben? I think if you asked me to predict Tranmere Rovers' top scorer this season, I think it's going to be Amari Patrick.
Yeah,
I think he'll probably get 15.
Almost certainly from what we've seen so far, yeah. Even if he has a dip,
he's the only one who's scored goals so far, so that's a pretty good guess at the minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree there.
I wanted to touch on, obviously Tranmere Rovers look solid, but we don't know whether they're going to have the star quality to get into that top 7. Barrow, Ed, what do we think about them? 3 wins from their first 4 under Stephen Clement.
I'm pleasantly a bit surprised by Barrow, because part of the reason for this is I didn't really think much of Stephen Clement and Gillingham. Maybe a little bit of that is that decision to get rid of Harris rattled me quite a lot. The decision at the time. I find like when a club changes the manager, basically because they don't really like the football that's being played, that kind of gets under me a little bit. I felt like Harris was having Gillingham
especially in season, Ed.
In season, exactly that kind of reason. And then the Clements comes in, and Gillingham are this bizarre side that have a minus goal difference and yet somehow still flirt with the playoffs throughout most of the camp. They were really confusing last year, Gillingham. I don't know how they did what they did, and they ultimately did fall away at the end. So he goes to Barrow to replace a guy in Pete Wild who's delivered their 2 best seasons of decades. And you're thinking that's quite big boots to fill. But this has started pretty nicely. Ben Jackson is brilliant at left back. I've really, really enjoyed him. Farman's looking really good at the minute. He was brilliant against Harrogate at the weekend in particular. Yeah. It's a nice core to have into there at the minute. I think even without Conor Mahoney available at the moment, just having that option of playing Jed Garner up top, playing Emil Aqua. I love Emil Aqua. Scores bangers. I love the build to him. I love his story coming out of non-league as well, playing at Maidenhead previously. Just a really likeable little group at the minute. And this has been a really bright start from them.
Well, what I really like is Jed Garner has started as a team sheet striker, if you like. But to my eyes, and I'd love to hear from any Barrow fans who have, I think he's been operating a bit like a false 9, because if you look at some of their moves at Harrogate, Jed Garner wasn't actually in the box at the end of moves. He was actually vacating space, and you saw Cian Spence coming into goal-scoring areas. You had Popov cutting in from the right, and then you had that Chiarte providing a little bit of individualism, that pace and power from the left, and sometimes linking up with Ben Jackson as well. So I like some of the football that Barrow are playing, and yeah, I'm excited to see what I feel like I'm starting to see what Stephen Clements' ideas are. So very early on, so yeah, really encouraging from that point of view.
No, definitely, and they scored. I think it was Gillingham. There was some stats on them last season where they hadn't scored many before he came in. I know they didn't score many in total in his reign, but there were a few games where they scored 3 or more in the game, and they hadn't done that all season. And already Barrow scored 4 in one game, and I think that he's taken over another group. He's probably a bit unfortunate. He's taken over groups that have not really been conducive to playing an attacking brand of football, but he could get more goals out of the group, I think. So yeah, I think on paper, it's not, you don't look at that group and go, "Wow, this is an amazing squad." But I also think you look at the squad and go, "There's a lot of good players there."
Is there an argument or a bit of surprise package at the minute? Because I think we all kind of thought there'd be some regression on the back of what we just seen under Wild.
Definitely surprised me.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, really encouraging start from Barrow. Listen, thanks so much, guys, for joining me this evening. Thanks to Ed Walker, expert on all things fourth tier, to Tom Williams from the Not to Talk About podcast, and Tom H. Williams 23 on Twitter, you must follow, and Ben Jones of Tranmere Rovers, bring his insight on the Wirralians. But thanks to all our guests this evening. Thanks to you for watching at home. This has been the EFL Debate League 2 podcast. We'll see you again next week.